Have you ever experienced a coincidence so perfectly timed, so incredibly specific, that it actually made your stomach drop?
Oh, absolutely. It's the worst feeling. Like the universe is suddenly staring right at you.
Right. You know the feeling exactly. The hair on the back of your arm stands up, and for a split second, the world feels less like a random series of events and more like this carefully constructed machine operating just out of sight.
Yeah, like you've just peeked behind the curtain.
Exactly. Well, today's deep dive takes you straight into a narrative source file that explores the absolute darkest possible version of that feeling. The text is titled Nightline 97.3, The Prophet in the Static.
And it is a deeply unsettling story.
It really is. Our mission today is to unpack the factual events of this narrative, examining how an ordinary engineering student in Pune stumbled into this terrifying time loop paradox.
And it serves as a masterclass in psychological dread, largely because it starts with the utterly mundane. I mean, we are not dropping you into a haunted castle or some dark forest here.
No, not at all.
We are in a cramped student apartment in Pune, India, during this heavy Tuesday night thunderstorm. We meet Rohan, an electronics engineering student. And the text paints a highly relatable picture of him.
Oh, very relatable.
Right. He's drinking this terrible instant coffee, the kind you only drink when you are pretending you don't need actual sleep. And he's spending his night fixing outdated gadgets.
Mm-hmm.
He is essentially doing what a lot of us do in our 20s.
Just projecting the illusion that he has his life under control.
Exactly. Just faking it till you make it.
That is such a universal experience. I think we all have that one friend who, hoards useless vintage electronics, convincing themselves they'll fix them up one day.
Oh, I was that friend for a while.
See, Rohan is that guy. He's sitting in the dark with this junk market analog radio. And the physical description in the source is striking. It features cracked knobs, a rusted antenna, and a faded silver casing heavily scratched by time.
The kind of thing most people would pass right by at a flea market.
Totally. But he's playing with the tuner, listening to the white noise, when he hits a frequency at exactly 12.17 a.m. And through the heavy, grainy static, this old-fashioned, calm, theatrical voice cuts through.
Out of nowhere.
Right. It welcomes insomniacs to Nightline 97.3, where tomorrow's nightmares arrive right on time. Okay, let's unpack this. Think of finding this station scrolling through the dark web by accident.
Oh, that's a chilling thought.
You know you shouldn't be there, the atmosphere is instantly oppressive, but the sheer novelty of the voice pulling you in is just too compelling to ignore.
The dark web analogy gives us a really good starting point, but I'd argue this is even more insidious. When you navigate the dark web, you are making active choices. Here, the broadcast is actively invading his space.
That's a great point. It's coming to him.
Exactly. And there is a soft jazz playing faintly in the background of this radio show, creating a deeply unsettling cognitive dissonance. The audio quality is distant, almost like a recording trapped underwater.
It doesn't sound like a normal FM station at all.
No, it defies all the acoustic markers of a modern broadcast. Yet Rohan listens, as the host casually tells a story about a neighborhood near Laxmi Apartments.
Just a few blocks away.
Right. The voice claims a young woman is going to wake up tomorrow morning to discover her husband has hidden 3 bodies beneath their bedroom floor. And by sunrise, police will uncover them.
Which is just a wild thing to hear on a radio show. Naturally, Rohan smirks. He assumes it's an immersive fiction podcast.
Like a late-night horror storytelling broadcast?
Yeah, playing into the aesthetic. So he goes to sleep and completely dismisses it until lunchtime the next day.
This is where it gets crazy.
Students all over campus are clustered around their phones, streaming breaking news. A woman in Pune called the police. They found human remains under her floor. 3 bodies. And the apartment complex, Laxmi Apartments, every single detail matches the midnight broadcast.
What's fascinating here is the immediate psychological defense mechanism Rohan employs. Human logic is heavily biased toward maintaining an orderly universe. We are fundamentally wired to reject the impossible.
So his brain just scrambles to build a bridge back to normality.
Exactly. Rohan tells himself that perhaps someone in the police department leaked the information early. Or maybe the radio story was pre-recorded after the murder happened, and his sense of the timeline is just flawed.
He attempts to cram this supernatural square peg into the round hole of a rational universe.
Because the alternative is just too terrifying to accept.
I am curious about that tipping point, though. At what stage does a skeptical person just abandon logic entirely? Because the very next night, Rohan is waiting by the radio at 12:17 a.m.
He's hooked.
He really is. The jazz music returns. And the host sounds almost amused this time, telling a story about Highway 48. He describes a fuel truck losing control in heavy rain the following evening, pinpointing the location, the resulting fire, the fact that 6 people will die, and the exact time of the crash.
So specific.
Before the static overtakes the signal, the host drops a line that completely shifts the dynamic. He says some futures beg to be changed, others refuse.
That phrase right there acts as the fulcrum for the entire narrative. Because the following evening, at exactly 8:42 p.m., the fuel truck crashes.
Just like the voice said.
The rain, the fire, the 6 fatalities, the real-world event mirrors the broadcast flawlessly. The source notes this is the moment fear fully eclipses his curiosity. His rationalizations crumble.
He can't deny it anymore.
No. Rohan understands he is no longer passively consuming true crime media. He is receiving foreknowledge.
Which introduces a massive, just a paralyzing ethical dilemma. If you know a tragedy is going to happen and you do nothing, are you complicit?
It's the ultimate burden.
Over the next week, the source describes this brutal cycle. Rohan listens obsessively. A new prediction arrives every night, followed by a new reality the next day.
It just keeps happening.
A stabbing near a cinema hall, a bridge collapse, a missing child found in a water tank. He knows about these events hours or even days in advance, so eventually he decides he has to act.
He tries to play hero.
Right. The radio predicts a robbery at a downtown convenience store ending in a cashier's murder. Rohan calls the police anonymously. He warns them of this specific location and time, and they actually deploy extra officers to patrol the area.
So he thinks he's beaten the system.
He really does. But the robbery happens anyway, and the cashier dies exactly as predicted.
The failure of his intervention highlights a terrifying concept of determinism. He attempted to rewrite the script, but the universe simply routed around his changes to ensure the exact same outcome.
It's like fate is actively working against him.
Yes. It heavily reinforces that earlier quote regarding futures that refuse to be changed.
I find myself struggling with the radio's actual intent here, though. Is it warning him or is it taunting him?
That is the million-dollar question.
Reading the source, it feels like he's been handed the ultimate cheat code to a video game, but his controller is unplugged. He can see the enemy's code, he knows the attack patterns, but no matter what buttons he mashes, he's just trapped behind the glass watching the disaster play out.
The unplugged controller analogy captures his frustration perfectly. But I view the mechanism as far more malicious than a broken game. He isn't just watching a screen, he is being actively conditioned.
Conditioned,
Yeah.
like psychologically.
Yes. It is more akin to a malware program. Every time he hits a button trying to fix the game, he is inadvertently granting the virus deeper administrative access to his own psychology.
Oh, wow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are witnessing the systemic development of a Cassandra complex.
Right. For those unfamiliar, Cassandra is the figure from Greek mythology who was given the gift of prophecy but cursed to never be believed.
Exactly that. Rohan is living the myth. He tries to record the broadcasts on his phone to gather proof, but every digital file corrupts into pure static.
So he has nothing to show anyone.
Nothing at all. No one else can tune into the frequency.
Yeah.
His friends start looking at him differently, making offhand comments about his mental stability. He becomes entirely isolated.
Which is a terrible place to be.
In psychological terms, isolation is a highly specific, highly dangerous vulnerability. It strips away your reality testing mechanisms, the friends and family who usually help you contextualize the world.
And he stops telling people because the social cost just becomes too steep. But he keeps listening. He can't walk away.
Because of the guilt.
Exactly. He harbors this irrational sliver of hope that the next broadcast will be the future that begs to be changed. But that hope is the actual trap, isn't it?
Oh, completely.
The broadcast was never intended to be a public service announcement. It wasn't designed to save motorists on Highway 48 or the cashier downtown. Those tragedies were just bait.
There were.
It was a lure meant to hook his attention, isolate him from his support network, and position him as the primary target.
The entity behind the frequency weaponizes human empathy. By presenting him with unsolvable moral puzzles, it guarantees he will sit alone in the dark night after night, tuned into that specific frequency.
It's grooming him.
Yes, it conditions his behavior. Once he is fully isolated, sleep-deprived, and entirely dependent on the radio as his only source of truth, the broadcast executes its pivot.
And the pivot is where the narrative shifts from a psychological thriller to just visceral, undeniable horror.
It really ramps up.
It's raining heavily again. 12:17 a.m. The soft jazz crackles through the speaker. But the host's tone drops its theatrical amusement. It becomes dead serious.
The shift in tone is terrifying.
The host whispers, "Tonight's story comes from Shivneri Residency. That is the name of Rohan's building." The host lists the 4th floor. He specifies that 5 students live there.
He's getting closer and closer.
Then the radio shatters the 4th wall entirely. The host says, "One of them is awake right now. He's listening carefully." A faint chuckle comes through the static before the voice says, "Good evening, Rohan."
The violation of his sanctuary is absolute. Up until this second, the radio functioned as a window looking out into a dangerous world. Instantaneously, it becomes a window looking in at him.
The ultimate invasion of privacy.
The power dynamics completely invert. The radio host lays out the timeline. By 2:03 a.m., knocking will begin at apartment 407. By 2:11 a.m., everyone inside the building will be dead. It is a suffocatingly tight countdown.
Here's where it gets really interesting, looking at Rohan's reaction. He doesn't freeze, he completely panics. He sprints into the hallway, hammering on doors, screaming for his neighbors to evacuate.
But the Cassandra curse you mentioned earlier pays off with devastating consequences right here.
Right, his neighbors don't believe him. They're annoyed. They threaten to call building security because this seemingly unstable student is screaming in the halls after midnight.
I think he's lost his mind.
By 1:45 a.m., the corridors are empty again. Everyone returns to bed, leaving Rohan entirely alone with the prophecy. He retreats to his apartment, locks the door, and waits as the storm hammers the windows. Then the knocking starts.
Notice how methodical the threat is. The source describes a soft knock echoing from somewhere down the hallway. Then another, moving floor to floor, slowly advancing.
Taking its time.
When neighbors open their doors to investigate, the lights die. The entire building is plunged into darkness, followed by screams echoing up the stairwell.
Just absolute chaos.
Rohan is barricaded in his room with only a trembling phone flashlight. Then his unplugged antique radio switches on by itself. The host's voice emerges from the static, announcing, "It's here!"
Rohan is screaming at the radio, demanding to know what is out there. The host simply warns him not to open the door. Then comes the knocking on Rohan's door. But it is not a heavy, monstrous pounding like you'd expect.
No, it's much worse.
The entity outside begins to speak, and it uses his mother's voice. His mother, who lives hundreds of kilometers away, is suddenly standing in the hallway pleading, "Rohan Beta, open the door!"
It's so deeply manipulative.
When he doesn't respond, the voice morphs into his best friend. Then it shifts into the voices of his neighbors, weeping in terror.
This raises an important question regarding the nature of the threat. The radio host whispers, "It learns people before it kills them."
Which is such a chilling line.
It is. This creature does not rely on brute force to breach the door. It utilizes emotional exploitation. We can draw a parallel to modern digital threats like AI voice cloning used in phishing scams.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
Right. Scammers use the simulated voice of a loved one in distress to bypass your logical reasoning. The entity weaponizes his deepest psychological attachments.
It knows exactly what buttons to push.
Exactly. It creates a severe cognitive dissonance. Rohan's prefrontal cortex knows his mother is not in Pune, but his nervous system is reacting to the auditory trigger of his mother crying for help. It is a predatory tactic engineered to bypass logic and trigger an instinctual reflex to open the door.
It wants him to be the architect of his own demise. Rohan is leaning his entire body weight against the door, just desperate. He screams at the radio, "Who are you?"
And the response changes everything.
For several seconds, there's only the sound of static. Then the narrative delivers a revelation that upends the entire structure of the story. The host on the radio sighs heavily and replies, "I was you once. My name is Rohan Mehta."
It is a phenomenal twist that recontextualizes everything.
It really is a gut punch.
The calm, older voice that has been narrating this nightmare, predicting the deaths, and leading Rohan to this exact moment is Rohan himself.
Mind-blowing.
It is a version of Rohan from the year 1987. The 1987 Rohan explains that decades ago, he also found the station. He also tried to warn the victims, failed, and eventually, the entity tracked him to his building too.
I need to pause here because the mechanics of this are just mind-bending. Rohan asks what the thing outside the door actually is. The 1987 Rohan answers, "It's listening through the radio."
The trigger phrase.
The moment that sentence is spoken, the physical reality of the apartment deteriorates. Every electronic device in Rohan's room, his smartphone, his laptop, the television powers on simultaneously.
Complete technological possession.
They emit violent static and the overlapping sounds of hundreds of whispering voices. The physical pressure becomes too much, and the apartment door bursts open.
The visual description of the entity defies standard monster tropes. It is neither human nor animal. The text describes a shifting, human-shaped shadow.
Like a silhouette.
But beneath its completely black skin, there are moving faces. Countless faces screaming silently. It is an amalgamation of every person it has ever learned and consumed.
Not my stat.
And it steps slowly into the room, backing Rohan into a corner.
At that precise second, the 1987 Rohan screams through the speaker, "Destroy it now." Operating purely on adrenaline, Rohan grabs the heavy antique radio and smashes it onto the floor.
The only option left.
The casing shatters. The room erupts into a deafening wall of static. The shadow creature shrieks, and every light bulb in the apartment shatters simultaneously, followed immediately by absolute silence.
A sudden vacuum of sound.
So what does this all mean? My read on this is that the radio acted as a physical anchor for a supernatural virus. The entity existed as a signal, like a frequency.
I agree.
By destroying the hardware, Rohan basically deleted the software from his reality, severing the connection entirely.
The hardware-software analogy is highly effective. Destroying the physical conduit closed the channel. And the aftermath the next morning supports this theory.
How so?
Rohan wakes up on his apartment floor. The thunderstorm is past. He walks into the hallway, and the building is entirely normal. His neighbors are alive, leaving for class.
Like nothing happened.
Exactly. His door is completely undamaged. There is zero physical evidence of the massacre that occurred just hours prior. It is so normal that for a few days, Rohan manages to convince himself it was a stress-induced psychotic break.
He falls back on logic again.
He tells himself it was just the hallucination of an overworked engineering student.
But the source material leaves us with a final chilling piece of physical evidence that shatters that rationalization. While the apartment is pristine, the radio remains in pieces on his floor.
He can't ignore that.
As Rohan cleans up the debris, he looks inside the broken casing. Fastened to the interior components is a small, rusted metal label. It reads, "Property of Nightline radio station Pune, 1987."
Such a great detail.
And beneath that printed label, scratched deeply and carefully into the metal by hand, is a warning. If you hear my voice, don't keep listening.
It forced him to accept the horrific reality of his experience. The time loop was real. The entity was real. It really highlights the immense danger of our own curiosity.
We just can't help ourselves.
We're biologically driven to seek out the unknown, to find patterns in the noise, to listen to the static. But this narrative serves as a visceral warning. When you dive too deeply into the static, you invite the static to look back at you. Not all mysteries are meant to be solved, and some signals should just be ignored.
Which leaves us with a lingering, paradoxical dread about how time loops actually function.
Oh, the paradox is the best part.
If the 2026 Rohan destroyed the radio and stopped the cycle, how did the 1987 Rohan get trapped inside the broadcast in the first place? It's a classic closed-loop paradox.
It makes your head spin.
Were there infinite versions of Rohan stretching back through time, each one failing to smash the radio, getting consumed by the shadow, and eventually becoming the trapped voice warning the next generation? Think about it.
It's a terrifying thought.
When you are sitting alone in the dark and you hear a strange voice cutting through the static on an old frequency, whose trapped voice are you really hearing? Remember that perfect, stomach-dropping coincidence we talked about at the start? Maybe next time the universe aligns a little too perfectly, you shouldn't lean in closer. Maybe you should just turn the dial and walk away.